I don't want a lady, I want a fighter who will cook, love, and bear sons, the giant Viking told her. Waves crashed below like great beasts roaring in anger, and lightning tore the sky in sudden, blinding flashes. In the midst of this fury stood a fortress carved from dark stone, weathered by centuries and cloaked in mystery. No one dared approach it without reason, none except those who sought conquest, or those who had nowhere else to go. Lady Ira of the Northern Kingdom rode along the coastal road, her cloak wrapped tightly around her against the chill. Her hair, dark as raven feathers, whipped across her face as she urged her horse forward. Her eyes scanned the horizon, searching for the distant towers of her family's castle. But the storm was relentless, and the path treacherous. A sudden shout rang across the cliffs. From the shadows of the rocks, towering figures emerged. Warriors, larger than any Ira had ever seen, armed with axes and shields that gleamed under the storm's fleeting light. Her heart raced, and she pulled her horse back. But the cliff offered little space for escape. The leader appeared last. He was a giant of a man, broad-shouldered and taller than any building in her memory. His hair was as wild as the storm itself, red gold and tangled, and his eyes burned like coals in the night. He carried a massive axe across his back, yet there was a strange grace in the way he moved. "You there?" His voice boomed over the wind, making the air vibrate. "Stop!" Ira's horse reared, frightened. She clutched the reins tightly. "Stay back!" she shouted. The giant stepped closer, and with each stride the ground seemed to tremble. "I am Bjorn the giant. You are not to ride this path alone. Come with me or face the sea." Ira's heart pounded, but pride burned in her chest. She was a lady of a noble family, trained in the arts of diplomacy, and yet she could not ignore the fire that stirred within her. "I do not belong to you," she shouted, voice strong despite the storm. Bjorn stopped, studying her with an intensity that made her shiver. "I do not want a lady," he said. "I want a fighter, one who will cook, who will love, and who will bear sons." Ira's eyes widened, her anger flaring. "You speak as though I exist only to serve." Bjorn's lips curved in a faint smile, though it did not reach his eyes. "I speak of strength, I speak of life, and I will have neither weakness nor lies." Before Ira could respond, the cliff beneath her horse crumbled slightly. The animal slipped, and she barely caught herself before falling. In that moment, Bjorn lunged forward and steadied her, his massive hands firm around her arms. "Hold still," he said, and though his touch was strong, there was no harm in it, only an almost frightening sense of safety. Ira pulled back, trembling. "Why would you help me?" "Because," he said, voice low, "even the strongest should not die foolishly." They stood there for a long moment, the storm beating around them like a living thing. Ira felt the heat of his presence, the weight of his power, and a curious pull she could not name. She did not trust him. She was a lady of logic and wit, yet her body betrayed her with a quickened pulse. Bjorn nodded toward the fortress behind him. "You will stay there until the storm passes. Then we will talk." Ira's pride rose. "I will not be held captive by a brute." Bjorn's laugh rumbled like distant thunder. "Brute, perhaps, but stronger than any of your castle guards, and clever enough to keep you alive." Reluctantly, Ira allowed him to guide her to the fortress. Its gates were immense, carved with runes that glimmered faintly in the storm's light. The doors swung open as if welcoming them, revealing halls of cold stone and shadows. Torches lined the walls, casting flickering lights that danced across ancient tapestries depicting battles and heroes long dead. Inside, warmth met the chill of the storm. Ira shook off her cloak, her body tense with both fear and curiosity. Bjorn stood beside her, surveying the halls with an air of ownership. "You will eat, you will sleep, you will live," he said, "and tomorrow you will train." Ira's jaw tightened. "Train? I am not a soldier." Bjorn's gaze held hers. "Perhaps you are more than you know. Perhaps you are the fighter I seek." The storm outside continued, howling like the cries of the damned, but inside, silence fell between them. The weight of expectation, The pull of destiny and the strange electricity of something unspoken pressed upon them. That night Ira could not sleep. She wandered the halls, fingers trailing along the cold stone, listening to the distant crash of waves and the occasional crack of thunder. The fortress seemed alive, its walls whispering secrets she could not understand. Magic lingered here, subtle but undeniable, like the hum of a hidden river beneath the rocks. In the central hall, she found Bjorn sitting alone, staring into the fire. He did not speak as she approached, yet she felt the pull of his presence. Something in the way he carried himself, strong, silent, unyielding, spoke to a world she had never known. "You do not fear me," he said quietly without turning. Ira shook her head. "Fear is for those who lack power." Bjorn's gaze met hers and she saw something she had not expected: curiosity, respect, and perhaps longing. "Then you are clever," he said, "but cleverness alone will not keep you alive here." She swallowed hard. "And yet you saved me." He studied her silently for a long moment. "Even giants can recognize strength," he said. The hours passed in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Ira thought of her family, of the life she had left behind, and the strange, dangerous man who now held her fate in his hands. Bjorn thought of battles, of victories and losses, and of the sudden, unexplainable concern he felt for a woman he did not yet understand. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the fortress, faint at first, then sharp. Stones shifted, dust fell from the ceiling, and an eerie blue glow lit the far wall. Ira's heart leapt. What is that?" she whispered. Bjorn rose immediately, axe in hand, muscles tensed. "The fortress does not like strangers," he said grimly. "It tests us." A soft hum filled the air, growing louder, vibrating through the stone. Ira felt it in her bones. A magic she had never touched but always known was there, waiting. Her fingers tingled, and a strange warmth spread from her chest outward. She looked at Bjorn, eyes wide with fear and wonder. I think it's me," she said. He did not respond. His focus was absolute, scanning the shadows where the glow pulsed strongest. "Then we must face it," he said simply. "Together." As they approached the heart of the fortress, the light flared and the air shimmered. Shadows stretched into impossible shapes, whispering her name, taunting, beckoning. Ira felt a pull toward it, both terrifying and irresistible. Bjorn stepped close behind her. "Do not falter," he said. His hand brushed hers, steadying her, grounding her, and for a moment she forgot fear. "I won't," she whispered. The glow swelled, enveloping them both. The fortress seemed to shudder in response, and then a great roar shook the air, as if some ancient beast had awoken. The stones beneath their feet cracked, dust filled their lungs, and Ira's heart leapt into her throat. In that moment the storm outside seemed to merge with the storm within the fortress. The air was alive, and destiny called them both into its depths. Bjorn's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold fast. Do not let it consume you." Ira nodded, gripping his arm. And then, as the light reached a blinding intensity, the ground beneath them began to give way. The ground beneath them shuddered and cracked, and Ira clung tightly to Bjorn's massive arm. The blue light from the fortress's heart burned against their eyes, flickering and pulsing like the heartbeat of a living creature. Dust and small stones rained down around them, and the air thrummed with a strange energy that made Ira's fingers tingle. Bjorn's eyes were sharp, scanning the shifting shadows. "Step carefully," he commanded. His voice carried authority, yet there was a thread of worry she had never heard in him before. "This place is alive. It tests those who enter." Ira swallowed hard and nodded. "I can feel it, like it knows us." Her voice was barely audible over the low hum, but she shivered with both fear and awe. They moved slowly through the crumbling corridor. Walls shifted in subtle ways, opening and closing passages as if the fortress itself was breathing. Shadows danced along the stone, forming shapes that were almost human, then melted into darkness. "Do not trust what you see," Bjorn warned. "The fortress will try to confuse you." Ira's heart raced. She had always relied on logic and careful planning, Yet here she was, forced to act on instinct alone. Her hand brushed against a glowing rune carved into the wall, and warmth spread through her fingers. A voice, soft and melodic, whispered in her mind. "Ira, follow, trust me." Her breath caught. "Bjorn, did you hear that?" Bjorn's brow furrowed. "Hear what?" "The voice, it's calling me," she said, her eyes wide. He reached out, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Do not let it lead you astray. You are stronger than its illusions." They pressed forward, moving deeper into the fortress. The light grew brighter and the air thicker, until every step felt like walking through water. Then the walls opened into a wide chamber, a cavern of stone lined with crystal-like formations that glowed with the same blue light. In the center floated a pool of water, perfectly still, reflecting not only their images but also their fears. Shadows moved beneath its surface, writhing and twisting like smoke. Ira's lips parted. "What is this?" Bjorn stepped beside her, towering over the pool. "A test. The fortress reveals truths here. What you see may not be real, but it will feel real." Ira knelt beside the water, unable to look away. Her reflection shifted, showing herself not as she was, but as she feared. Weak, powerless, a failure to her family and to herself. She gasped and took a step back. "Face it," Bjorn said quietly, his hand brushing hers. The warmth of his touch steadied her, and she felt a strange calm amid the storm of fear. "Do not run. Only by seeing yourself can you move forward." Her hands trembled. I am afraid," she admitted. Bjorn's gaze softened, yet remained firm. "So am I." But courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. Ira drew a deep breath. She stepped closer to the pool again, reaching out. The water rippled under her touch, revealing visions of her family, her home, and the life she had left behind. Then the image changed, showing her wielding her own magic with skill and confidence, defending those she loved. She felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Bjorn watched her closely, and then placed his hand over hers on the water's surface. Their combined touch sent a shock of energy through the pool. Shadows screamed and twisted violently, and the fortress trembled as if angry at their unity. "Together," Bjorn said, his voice low but steady. "We are stronger together." Ira met his eyes, and for a moment all fear vanished. In its place was a growing trust, a silent acknowledgement that she was not alone in facing the fortress or the dangers within it. Suddenly, a shadowy figure rose from the pool, forming into a creature of smoke and fire. Its eyes burned with malice, and it hissed in a language neither of them understood. Ira stumbled back, fear clawing at her chest. Bjorn raised his axe, his stance protective. "Do not falter. Stand with me." Ira squared her shoulders and drew a small dagger from her belt. Though it was no match for the creature physically, she felt a strange strength coursing through her veins. The magic within her pulsed, and she raised her hands, directing energy toward the shadow. The creature recoiled, smoke and sparks flying. Bjorn lunged forward, swinging his axe with precision, cutting through tendrils of darkness. Together, their efforts pushed the creature back toward the pool, where it dissolved in a final flash of blue light. They both staggered, breathing heavily, but neither let go of the other. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and dust, and the fortress hummed as if acknowledging their victory. Ira looked at Bjorn, admiration and something deeper shining in her eyes. I couldn't have done this without you." Bjorn's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Nor I without you," he admitted. For a moment the world outside seemed to vanish. There was only the fortress, the glowing pool, and the two of them, bound by trust and the strange intimacy of shared danger. Then the fortress shook violently. Stones fell from the ceiling and the walls cracked further. Ira clutched Bjorn's arm as a fissure opened beneath them, threatening to swallow the chamber. "Hold on," Bjorn shouted, grabbing her waist and pulling her back. He threw himself to the ground, anchoring them both as the stones shifted. Dust filled their lungs, and the light of the pool flickered dangerously. When the shaking stopped, they were on a lower level. The chamber above collapsed, leaving only rubble and silence. Ira coughed, brushing dust from her hair, and looked around. "The fortress, it's changing," she said, awe and fear mingling in her voice. Bjorn nodded grimly. "It tests us, and it will not stop. We must move forward or we will be trapped here forever." Ira's mind raced. She had been captured, thrown into danger, and now faced a living fortress with a giant who commanded both fear and fascination in equal measure. Yet through it all, she had never felt more alive. As they moved through the ruins, Ira noticed strange markings on the walls, runes glowing faintly in the dim light. She reached out to touch them, and warmth spread through her fingers. A whisper reached her mind, soft but insistent. "You are the key. You are the one." Bjorn noticed her pause. "Do not linger too long," he warned, his tone sharp. "The fortress does not forgive hesitation." Ira nodded, but her curiosity burned. I think this magic is part of me," she confessed. Bjorn's eyes softened, though they remained cautious. "Then you must learn to control it, or it will control you. I will help you, but only if you trust me completely." She looked at him, measuring the weight of his words. Trust was not easy for her. She had been trained to rely on herself, to guard her heart and her strength. Yet something in Bjorn's presence, in the steadiness of his hand and the unwavering intensity of his gaze, made her believe that perhaps trust was not weakness. "I will try," she said finally, her voice firm. He nodded, a faint smile brushing his lips. "That is all I ask." They continued deeper into the fortress, encountering challenges that tested their strength, intellect, and courage. Some were physical, narrow ledges over bottomless chasms, collapsing staircases, and ancient traps set to keep intruders out. Others were illusions, designed to prey on their fears and regrets. Through it all, they learned to move as one. Bjorn's strength protected Ira, while her magic and quick thinking saved them both from dangers he could not anticipate. Their bond grew, not through words alone, but through shared struggle and silent understanding. One night, after narrowly escaping a collapsing chamber, they rested in a small alcove lit by the faint glow of enchanted stones. Ira curled against the warmth of Bjorn's chest, her exhaustion momentarily overcoming her pride. You are not like anyone I have ever met," she whispered. Bjorn's eyes were fixed on the flickering stones, but his hand stroked her hair gently. "And you are unlike any woman I have ever known, strong, clever, and unafraid to face what terrifies you." Her heart fluttered at his words, a mixture of admiration, fear, and something more she could not name. I never thought I would feel safe here," she admitted. "You are safe with me," he said quietly. "As long as you remain by my side, I will not let harm come to you." For a long moment, silence held them. The fortress hummed around them, alive and watching. Yet for the first time, Ira did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like a partner, a fighter, and perhaps something more. But the fortress had one final challenge in store. As they slept, the ground beneath their alcove began to tremble. Dust fell from the ceiling and an eerie, low hum filled the air. Ira awoke to see the walls glowing with a strange light and shadows stretching toward them like reaching fingers. Bjorn stirred beside her, senses alert. "The fortress, it is not done with us," he said grimly. Ira rose, fear and determination mingling in her chest. "Then we face it, together." He nodded, lifting his axe, and she raised her hands, the glow of her magic illuminating her face. They stood side by side, ready to face whatever the fortress would throw at them next. And in that moment, as the shadows advanced and the fortress trembled around them, both understood that their journey was only beginning, and that their bond, forged in fear, strength, and trust, would be the key to surviving what lay ahead. The fortress groaned and trembled. Beneath them, as if waking from a long, deep slumber, shadows twisted along the walls, stretching like long fingers, reaching for the two intruders who dared to disturb its ancient heart. Ira tightened her grip on her glowing hands, the pulse of her magic echoing in her chest. Beside her, Bjorn's axe gleamed with the faint light of the enchanted stones, his eyes sharp, unblinking, ready for anything. "Stay close," he said, his deep voice steady despite the storm raging within the fortress. "Do not let it separate us." Ira nodded, fear and determination mingling in her chest. She had faced illusions, falling staircases and creatures of shadow before, but the fortress had grown bolder. Its magic now felt personal, probing her mind, twisting memories, and calling forth doubts she had buried long ago. They moved through a hall where the stone floor cracked and shifted like a living river. Every step demanded precision. A false step would send them tumbling into the dark depths below. Shadows coiled around their legs, whispering doubts in voices both familiar and strange. "You are weak. You will fail. He cannot protect you." Ira shook her head violently, trying to push the words away. "No," she said aloud, her voice firm. "I am stronger than fear. I am not alone." Bjorn glanced at her, admiration flickering across his face. "Good, hold on to that. Fear is the fortress's weapon. Strength is yours." They reached the center of the fortress, a massive chamber carved from black stone. At its heart stood a statue of a woman with arms outstretched, eyes hollow and dark, her mouth open as if screaming silently. The air around her shimmered, thick with magic. Ira felt her pulse quicken. This is the source, isn't it?" Bjorn nodded, his jaw tight. "The fortress tests all who enter. To survive, we must face it in ourselves." As they stepped closer, the statue's eyes glowed and shadows poured from its hollow sockets. They formed into figures from Ira's past, friends lost, family disappointed, enemies she feared. Each shadow lunged toward her, hissing words meant to wound. Ira stumbled, fear clawing at her chest. She wanted to flee, to collapse under the weight of it all. But then she felt Bjorn's hand on her back, strong and unwavering. "Face them," he said. "You are not them. You are here. You are alive. And you are not alone." She drew a deep breath and lifted her hands. The blue glow of her magic flared and the shadows recoiled. One by one, she called out their names, grounding herself in truth and memory, and the illusions faltered. Bjorn stepped beside her, swinging his axe to cut through the remaining tendrils of darkness. His movements were precise, a dance of strength and control honed through years of battle. "Together," he said again, and Ira felt the weight of the words settle like armor around her heart. They fought side by side, the fortress itself shaking with anger. Stones fell from the ceiling and cracks spread along the walls, but they did not waver. Every step forward was a victory, every breath a defiance of fear. Then the shadows vanished and the chamber fell silent. The statue stood alone, glowing faintly as if acknowledging their triumph. Ira's chest heaved with exhaustion, and her hands trembled with the raw energy she had summoned. Bjorn placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "You did well," he said, his voice low but warm. "You faced yourself and came out stronger." Ira's eyes met his, and for a moment all the exhaustion, fear, and tension melted into something deeper. I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. He shook his head. "No, we did this together. That is what matters." Her heart fluttered at his words, the bond between them deepening in ways neither had expected. The fortress had tested them, forced them to confront fears and doubts, but it had also forged a connection that was more than mere trust. It was understanding, respect, and a strange, unspoken longing. But their victory was short-lived. A sudden tremor ran through the floor, stronger than before. The statue's eyes flared with brilliant light, and a voice, deep and echoing, filled the chamber. "You have passed the first trials, but the final test awaits." Ira's breath caught. "Final test? What does it mean?" Bjorn's gaze hardened. "It means the fortress is not done with us. We must face it fully, or it will consume us." The ground beneath them cracked open, revealing a swirling vortex of blue and black light. From it rose a figure, taller than any human, cloaked in shadows that writhed like living smoke. Its eyes glowed with the same blue fire as the fortress, and its voice was both everywhere and nowhere. "Face yourselves," it said. "Only together can you survive." Ira felt a wave of fear, doubt, and sorrow crash over her. The figure reached toward her, and in that moment she saw visions of her greatest failures, moments where she had hesitated, moments where she had been powerless to protect those she loved. The memory stung, cutting deep into her heart. Bjorn stepped forward, placing himself between her and the figure. "Do not let it break you," he said. "We face it together." Ira drew in a deep, steadying breath. She lifted her hands, and the magic within her blazed, stronger than ever. "Together," she echoed, her voice ringing like a bell through the chamber. The shadowed figure lunged, and the chamber erupted into a storm of energy. Bjorn swung his axe with power and precision, cutting through the dark tendrils that reached for them. Ira unleashed blasts of magic, each pulse of energy striking with purpose. The battle was fierce, testing their strength, courage, and resolve. Shadows clawed at their minds, whispering doubts and fears, but each time one faltered, the other was there to steady them. Their trust was their shield, their bond their weapon. Hours, or perhaps minutes, passed in a blur of motion and magic. The fortress trembled violently, stones falling and dust swirling in the glowing light. Ira felt exhaustion threaten to overwhelm her, but Bjorn's steady presence, his voice urging her, reminded her of her strength. Finally, with a combined surge of magic and strength, they struck at the heart of the shadowed figure. A brilliant flash of light filled the chamber, and the figure screamed, dissolving into nothingness. The vortex collapsed, and the fortress fell silent as if holding its breath. Ira sank to her knees, chest heaving. "It's over," she whispered. Bjorn knelt beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "For now," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "But we are stronger because of it." Ira looked up at him, awe and gratitude shining in her eyes. "I never imagined that I could be this strong, or that I could feel safe with someone like you." Bjorn's gaze softened, and for the first time, a faint smile touched his lips. "You are more than you know, Ira. You are brave, clever, and remarkable. I am proud to stand beside you." Her heart fluttered, and a warmth spread through her chest. The fortress had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and yet in the fire of that trial, they had found something stronger than fear or doubt. They had found trust, partnership, and the beginning of something neither could yet name but both felt deeply. For a long moment, they simply sat together in the quiet, letting the weight of the battle and the storm around them settle. The fortress hummed faintly, as if acknowledging their victory, but Ira knew the journey was far from over. Then, a sudden vibration shook the ground. Dust and small stones fell from the ceiling, and Ira's pulse quickened. Bjorn rose immediately, axe at the ready. "What now?" he muttered, eyes scanning the shadows. From the far side of the chamber, a low, echoing laugh filled the air. It was soft, almost amused, yet it carried a weight that made Ira's skin prickle. Shadows gathered again, but this time they moved with intent, forming shapes taller and more menacing than before. Ira felt a cold dread creep into her heart. It's not done. "The fortress, it's changing again." Bjorn's eyes narrowed. "Then we will face it, as we have faced everything, together." She nodded, drawing strength from his words, from the bond they had forged. "Together," she repeated, her voice steady despite the fear. And as the shadows advanced, swirling like a storm around them, Ira and Bjorn stood side by side, ready to face the final, unknown trial of the fortress. Their hands met, a silent promise of trust, strength, and unspoken emotion. In that moment, neither fear nor doubt could touch them. Only the fortress, alive and ancient, waited to see if their bond would be enough to survive what came next. The fortress trembled as if angered by their courage. Shadows moved along the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes, yet Ira felt no fear, only determination. She stood beside Bjorn, his towering figure a constant anchor in the chaos. Their hands brushed, and she drew strength from the contact, a silent reminder that they faced this together. "This is it," Bjorn said, voice low but steady. "The final test. Whatever comes, we fight as one." Ira nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. "Together," she echoed, raising her hands as her magic pulsed with light. From the darkness, the fortress's energy condensed into a single massive figure. It towered above them, its form shifting between smoke and stone, fire and shadow. Its eyes glowed with an ancient, knowing intelligence, and its voice rumbled like distant thunder. You have survived trials of strength and courage, but can you survive truth? The air thickened, pressing against their chests, and suddenly visions filled Ira's mind. She saw herself failing those she loved, losing her family and collapsing under the weight of expectations. Her heart tightened and tears pricked her eyes. Bjorn noticed her falter and reached for her. "Do not face this alone," he said firmly. "Trust yourself and trust me." She drew a deep breath. I trust you," she whispered, and in that moment the fortress seemed to respond, letting them act as a unit. The shadowed figure lunged forward and the battle began. Unlike before, this was no longer just physical. The fortress projected their deepest fears, their regrets, and their unspoken doubts. Each strike they made cut not only at shadows but at illusions that sought to divide them. Ira felt a shadow take the shape of her younger brother, his face twisted in pain and blame. "You could have saved me," the figure cried. Her chest ached with sorrow, but she raised her hands, focusing her magic into a steady blue flame. "I did my best," she said aloud, "and I will not be controlled by fear." Bjorn's strength matched hers. Shadows took the form of fallen enemies, old battlefields, and impossible monsters. His axe cleaved through them, but he too had to confront his own visions, memories of a lost love, a betrayal that hardened his heart, a future he thought he would never have. Yet Ira's presence reminded him of another possibility. He drew courage from their bond. Together, they fought as one, their actions perfectly synchronized. She would cast her magic to weaken a shadow, he would strike it down. She would raise a protective barrier, he would shield her from falling debris. The fortress trembled under their combined power. Hours, or perhaps moments, passed in a blur of motion and light. The shadowed figure roared, the sound shaking the walls. Then suddenly it froze, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You understand now," it said, voice softer but filled with weight. "The fortress is not your enemy. It reflects your truth. Only together can you overcome it." Ira and Bjorn locked eyes, understanding dawning between them. They had not only fought the fortress, they had fought themselves, their doubts, their fears, and the shadows of the past. Ira stepped forward, her hand glowing with pure, focused energy. "We are stronger together," she said firmly, "and we will not be broken." Bjorn nodded, raising his axe. "For us, for life, for each other." They struck simultaneously, combining their power in one final, brilliant surge of light. The shadowed figure screamed, then dissolved into the glowing stones of the fortress. The tremors subsided, the shadows vanished, and the air cleared. Silence fell, thick and profound. Ira sank to her knees, exhausted but alive. Bjorn knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You were incredible," he said, pride in his voice. "You faced everything and did not falter." She looked up at him, her chest heaving. "I couldn't have done it alone." "Nor I," he admitted. "Together, we are stronger than any fortress, any magic, any shadow." The fortress seemed to acknowledge their victory. The glowing runes dimmed to a soft, warm light, and the air felt lighter, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. Ira rose, brushing dust from her cloak. She looked around at the ancient stones, once threatening and now serene. "It's peaceful," she whispered, "almost as if it's waiting for something new." Bjorn's gaze followed hers. "Perhaps it is waiting for us, to leave behind fear and claim the life we deserve." Ira felt her heart flutter at his words. The journey through the fortress had changed her. She was stronger, wiser, and braver than she had ever imagined. But it had also awakened something deeper, something she had tried to ignore, the bond she shared with Bjorn. The giant stepped closer, his presence both commanding and gentle. "Ira," he said softly, "you have earned your place beside me. Not as a captive, not as a follower, but as a partner, A fighter, a heart, a strength I never expected to find. Her chest tightened, emotions surging. Bjorn, she paused, struggling to find words. I never imagined feeling this way, about anyone, about you. His hand found hers, large and warm. Nor I about you, he admitted. But here we are, and here we must choose, fear or courage, doubt or trust, alone or together. Ira drew a deep breath, feeling the energy of the fortress calm around her. She met his eyes, seeing both strength and tenderness reflected there. Together, she said, a small smile forming. We face everything together. Bjorn's smile deepened, rare and genuine. Then together it shall be. They stood side by side, their hands entwined, and for the first time the fortress felt like a home, not a prison. Its ancient magic had tested them, broken them, and remade them. They were no longer just a noblewoman and a Viking giant. They were a team, a bond forged in battle, fear, and trust. The storm outside had cleared. The first rays of dawn touched the jagged cliffs, casting gold and pink across the sea. Waves lapped gently at the rocks below, a calm after the storm. The fortress no longer seemed menacing but majestic, a monument to resilience, strength, and hope. Bjorn turned to Ira, his eyes softening. We have survived the fortress. But life beyond these walls is just beginning. Our future is ours to shape. Ira nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest she could not name. I'm ready, she said. With you. They began to descend the fortress stairs together, their steps steady and confident. The halls, once filled with shadows, now glowed softly, welcoming them into a new chapter. Each step was a promise, to face life's challenges together, to grow stronger, and to protect each other. As they reached the base of the fortress, a figure emerged from the mist on the cliffs, a scout from Ira's kingdom. Relief and surprise filled her heart. Word of her capture had spread and help had come. But Ira did not hesitate. She turned to Bjorn, taking his hand firmly. We go together, she said. Bjorn's smile was firm, confident. Always. Together they stepped onto the cliffside, the sun rising behind them, casting long shadows that intertwined like their lives. The fortress stood behind them, silent and eternal, a witness to their courage and the bond they had forged. Ira looked at Bjorn, her heart full of both wonder and certainty. This is just the beginning, she said softly. He nodded, his eyes reflecting the dawn's light. Yes. And I promise we face it all together. Every storm, every shadow, every trial. The waves crashed below, a timeless rhythm echoing their own journey, chaotic, powerful, and beautiful. And as they walked away from the fortress, side by side, they both knew that whatever the world would throw at them, they would face it as one. The fortress, ancient and wise, watched silently. It had given them trials, it had tested their hearts, and it had forged them into something greater than either had imagined. But even as they left, a whisper carried on the wind, gentle yet certain. The bond is forged. The future awaits. Go and live as you were meant to. Ira and Bjorn exchanged a glance, hands still clasped, hearts beating in unison. Together they walked into the dawn of a new life, stronger, braver, and bound by trust, love, and the promise of all that was yet to come. The journey through fear, shadows, and magic had ended. But the journey of life, love, and legacy had only just begun.